tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this simple skeleton key pendant. Now, what I'm going to use for this tutorial, 2 different gauges of wire. I've got 14 gauge and 18 gauge, mine are bare copper, and I'm going to use a 10 millimeter bead, and for my tools, a pencil, round. Now if you have something else you'd prefer to use, we're going to use the pencil to actually create the loops. And we need some round nose, some flesh cutters, and whatever other pliers you'd like to use, at least chain nose and or bent nose, flat nose, and a ruler to measure our wire. And we're also going to do a little bit of hammering today. So I've just got a chasing hammer with my steel block, and without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, we're going to take our 14 gauge wire, and I'm going to pull off 14 inches is what we're going to use for these. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and measure off 14 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and flush cut both ends just because it's heavy gauge, and I do tend to scratch myself, and it leaves a cut that's very similar to a paper cut. Okay, now we're going to take our ruler again and our pencil or whatever round object you have found to use. We're basically going to wrap the wire around several times, but we want to start the wrapping at about 5 inches. So I've got a hole at about 5 inches, and I'm going to take the long section and I'm going to start wrapping it around. Make sure it's snug. I've got it, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We need 5 complete wraps. And then we're going to go ahead and take it off the pencil. Now, in my opinion, this is about the most difficult part of the project, because what we're going to do is we have to manipulate this heavy wire so that we can actually splay out all of our little loops. You just got to fiddle with it, push, and start twisting. Now don't worry if they get a little bit wonky or misshapen, because we're going to fix it. So we continue on, spread them apart. See, we've got them started. Spread them apart a little bit more. Let's see what that looks like now if we pull them together. Kind of, we'll just gauge as we go, but we want enough area here where the 10 millimeter bead is actually going to kind of sit in that center area there without kind of falling over to one side or the other. It just kind of needs to be seated there. It just works out better that way. That's looking pretty good. I think I'm gonna go with that. Before I start the lower portion of the key though, I want to sit my bead to make sure it's gonna kind of sit there. That looks pretty good. So what you want to do is you're going to hold on to the upper portion of the key, just as much of that as you can, and then you're also going to hold on to both wires on the lower portion of the key, and you're going to push down on the top one with your thumb and up with the bottom one with your fingers as you twist. That way you get an even twist. And you're going to go down, you're going to twist for about an inch, and this sounds pretty exact, an inch and 7/8. If you go too much further than that, you're going to have, and I've done it here, this one was 2 inches, and I just felt like this portion of the key was a little bit too long. It just looked a little bit long, though it's okay. It worked out. But when you do it shorter, I think it looks better. And that's 1 7/8. So you just start twisting. And then get your ruler, and we're measuring from where they join, right at the V. So we've got, look at that, 1 7/8. And I'm going to just put it side by side so that I can compare it. It doesn't look like it right now, but that is going to be plenty long. So we're going to have one that's going to go straight down and one that's going to twist around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take what I'm going to consider the upper wire, and I'm going to just lay it straight, and then the lower wire, I'm going to go ahead and bring it around like so. You can also have it come off the other side. Got them going both ways here. It just depends on how you want to do it. So we're going to measure 1/2 inch. We're going to do the lower portion, the straight wire now, and I bent it at 1/2 inch. Now if you want the lower portion to be a little bit longer, I know I've got a few examples here. See, this one's a little bit, this one's shorter than this one. This one I came down almost a full inch. It was more like, I think that was about about 7/8 of an inch. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and measure this one down a little more than 1/2 inch. And you can mark it or not, or just grab a hold of it with your pliers. And I'm going to say right I'm going to go ahead and do it at 5/8. Now we want to bend in the direction of the other wire. Like that. Now with your, if you have flat nose, we're going to just squeeze this together. You can use your chain nose. Like that. I know what I forgot to put on my list of tools. Cheaters. And we're going to snip it about now we're going to take our round nose and pull that out just a little bit so we can get our pliers in there. You might have to move this top wire out of the way. I'm going to see if I can do it without it. I'm making the smaller loop, so I am starting it about right there. Grab tightly. I do have to move that out of the way. So we got our first loop. Bring that wire back around. Now we're going to do a larger loop on the top. We're going to cut about, let's see, how much is that? 3/4 of an inch. Now I've got my mark for my larger loops. Go ahead and grab a hold, twist toward the top of the key. Close your loop. Now we're going to tweak this a little bit. try and get this upper loop down just a little bit. They don't have to touch. That's pretty good. Okay, now we're going to concentrate on the uppers. Just make sure that your loops are the same distance apart and that everything looks symmetrical. This one, we don't have to tweak too much, but I've got one loop that's a little larger than the other. And I'm just going to twist just a little bit. Okay, after we get the loops the way we want them, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of hammering. Got my cloth to absorb some of the sound and my block. Decide which one is going to be your front and which one is going to be your back. I think this will be my front. Try and make sure that the twisted portion of the key is straight before you start hammering, because it's harder to straighten it out. We're not going to hammer it really hard. We're going to do it just enough so that it's not really bendable. I mean, you'll still be able to bend it, but it's going to be quite sturdy once we do a little hammering. Okay. I'll mute this while I do some hammering, but what we're going to do is we're going to do the tops of each loop, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so now that we've got the tops hammered, we're going to go ahead and very gently hammer along the twisted portion. I say gently because if you hammer too much, the wires could break. This is just to give it a little bit more stability. I'm going to go ahead and mute it again. All right, I'm finished hammering the twisted portion, and it is quite solid. It's hard to bend. You can still bend it, but it's hard to bend. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and do the loops at the bottom of the key and the bottom portion. And mute that. Finished hammering. And of course, whenever you hammer, it's gonna get a little bit out of shape. So I'm just gonna go ahead and squeeze this back. Look at it. It looks like the whole thing got just a little bit twisted. Okay, I am satisfied with the way they look. So I'm going to go ahead and pull off some of my 18 gauge, and I'm going to pull off about 7 inches. And I'm going to grab my bead and place my bead in the center of the wire. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my key and place the bead and we're going to wrap the wire around both sides all the way around. Make sure they're tight. You can pinch if you need to. Now we're going to go ahead and continue around. With one side, doesn't matter which, to the base, and we're going to wrap it around. And then we're going to go ahead and bring the other wire, crisscross it over, and wrap it around under the first wire. We're going to wrap it 2 or 3 times. Maybe one more. Now we're going to snip the top wire, which was the first wire we wrapped around. And let's see, we're going to tuck it right in the back. So let's make sure that we've got a place to sit it. Okay, so I've made a little space right there in between those 2 wires. Which is where it's going to end up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and snip it off. We don't want it going all the way around back to the front. And go ahead and press it down and put it right into that crevice. Now the other one, go ahead and pull it around just a little bit. Hold on to it, and we're going to go straight up. And we're going to tuck it down into there. So we're going to cut a little bit off. And this one I always like to use my round nose pliers at the very tip or right near the tip. Grab a hold of it and turn just a little bit. We're not making a full loop with it, we're just turning it a little bit. And then you can take your chain nose or your bent nose and you can go ahead and coax it. Now it's not going to go in there probably, but it's going to go just back. Let me press it. Okay, so there is the bulk of the key. Now I'm going to set that aside. And I've already got, let's see, no I don't. I'm going to have to make some jump rings. Just real quick, I'm going to go ahead and take my 14 gauge again and my pencil, and I'm not even going to take any off, but I'm going to wrap it around a few times. That way I have some for my next few. Take the pencil out. I'm going to go ahead and cut my first piece. Separate those just a little bit so that I can get my pliers in there. And I'm going to make sure I've got the flush cut on the ring side. Now I'm going to use that cut there as a guide. And there we go. We have a wonderful jump ring ready to go. Get my 2 pairs of pliers. It's already opened. Just loop it on. Close it up. There we go. That's easy. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'll be coming up with some more tutorials in the future. And also, if you liked it, give it a like. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.